Hello, girls and boys. Dr. Palumbi here, and I am going to be reading a great book today called The Giving Tree by Shel Silverstein. Once there was a tree, and she loved a little boy. And every day the boy would come, and he would gather her leaves and make them into crowns and play king of the forest. He would climb up her trunk and swing from her branches and eat apples. And they would play hide and go seek. And when he was tired, he would sleep in her shade. And the boy loved the tree very much, and the tree was happy. But time went by, and the boy grew older, and the tree was often alone. Then one day the boy came to the tree, and the tree said, "Come, boy, come and climb up my trunk and swing from my branches and eat apples and play in my shade and be happy." "I am too big to climb and play," the boy said. "I want to buy things and have fun. I want some money. Can you give me some money?" "I'm sorry," said the tree, "but I have no money. I only have leaves and apples. Take my apples, boy, and sell them in the city. Then you will have money, and you will be happy." And so the boy climbed up the tree and gathered her apples and carried them away, and the tree was happy. But the boy stayed away for a long time, and the tree was sad. And then one day the boy came back, and the tree shook with joy, and she said, "Come, boy, climb up my trunk and swing from my branches and be happy." "I'm too busy to climb up trees," said the boy. "I want a house to keep me warm," he said. "I want a wife and I want children, and so I need a house. Can you give me a house?" "I have no house," said the tree. "The forest is my house, but you may cut off my branches and build a house. Then you will be happy." And so the boy cut off her branches and carried them away to build his house. And the tree was happy. But the boy stayed away for a long time, and when he came back, the tree was so happy she could hardly speak. "Come, boy," she whispered. "Come and play." "I am too old and sad to play," said the boy. "I want a boat that will take me far away from here. Can you give me a boat?" "Cut down my trunk and make a boat," said the tree. "Then you can sail away and be happy." And so the boy cut down her trunk and made a boat and sailed away. And the tree was happy, but not really. After a long time, the boy came back again. "I am sorry, boy," said the tree, "but I have nothing left to give you. My apples are gone." "My teeth are too weak for apples," said the boy. "My branches are gone," said the tree. "You cannot swing on them." "I am too old to swing on branches," said the boy. "My trunk is gone," said the tree. "You cannot climb." "I am too tired to climb," said the boy. "I'm sorry," sighed the tree. "I wish that I could give you something, but I have nothing left. I am just an old stump. I am sorry." "I don't need very much now," said the boy. "Just a quiet place to sit and rest. I am very tired." "Well," said the tree, straightening herself up as much as she could. "Well, an old stump is good for sitting and resting. Come, boy, sit down, sit and rest." And the boy did. And the tree was happy. The end. Boys and girls, I hope you enjoyed that book as much as I did. I love the message that the Giving Tree sends, that we only have so much to give, and with love, we're willing to give a lot. I hope you think about the people who love you in your life and how much they've given you. And maybe you'll take some time to tell them how important they are until we're all just stumps one day. Have a great day. Bye.
Hi, boys and girls. I'm super excited to be able to read one of my all-time favorite books to you today. It's about one of my all-time favorite famous people, and her name is Ruby Bridges. And Ruby Bridges, in the story you're about to hear, is just a little first grade girl. She lived in New Orleans, and when the New Orleans schools were desegregated, meaning they were going to allow Black students and white students to go to school in the same building, she was the first one at this particular school to enter and enroll as a Black student. So I think you're going to be interested to find out a little bit about what happened in her experience and the bravery that she showed. Our Ruby taught us all a lot. She became someone who helped change our country. She was part of history, just like generals and presidents are a part of history. They're leaders, and so was Ruby. She led us away from hate, and she led us nearer to knowing each other, the white folks and the Black folks. And that was Ruby's mother speaking about her. Ruby Bridges was born in a small cabin near Tylerton, Mississippi. We were very poor, very, very poor, Ruby said. My daddy worked picking crops. We just barely got by. There were times when we didn't have much to eat. The people who owned the land were bringing in machines to pick the crops, so my daddy lost his job, and that's when we had to move. I remember us leaving. I was 4, I think. At that time, Black children and white children went to separate schools in New Orleans. The Black children were not able to receive the same education as the white children. It wasn't fair, and it was against the nation's laws. In 1960, a judge ordered 4 Black girls to go to 2 white elementary schools. 3 of the girls were sent to McDonough 19. 6-year-old Ruby Bridges was sent to 1st grade in the William Frantz Elementary School. Ruby's parents were proud that their daughter had been chosen to take part in an important event in American history. They went to church. We sat there and prayed to God, Ruby's mother said, that we'd all be strong and we'd have courage and we'd get through any trouble. And Ruby would be a good girl, and she'd hold her head up high and be a credit to her own people and a credit to all the American people. We prayed long and we prayed hard. On Ruby's first day, a large crowd of angry white people gathered outside the Frantz Elementary School. The people carried signs that said they didn't want Black children in a white school. People called Ruby names. Some wanted to hurt her. The city and state police did not help Ruby. The President of the United States ordered federal marshals to walk with Ruby into the school building. The marshals carried guns. Every day, for weeks that turned into months, Ruby experienced that kind of school day. She walked to the Frantz school surrounded by marshals. Wearing a clean dress and a bow in her hair and carrying her lunch pail, Ruby walked slowly for the first few blocks. As Ruby approached the school, she saw a crowd of people marching up and down the street. Men and women and children shouted at her. They pushed toward her. The marshals kept them from Ruby by threatening to arrest them. Ruby would hurry through the crowd and not say a word. The white people in the neighborhood would not send their children to school. When Ruby got inside the building, she was all alone except for her teacher, Mrs. Henry. There were no other children to keep Ruby company, to play with and learn with, to eat lunch with. But every day Ruby went into the classroom with a big smile on her face, ready to get down to the business of learning. She was polite, and she worked well at her desk, Mrs. Henry said. She enjoyed her time there. She didn't seem nervous or anxious or irritable or scared. She seemed as normal and relaxed as any child I've ever taught. So Ruby began learning how to read and write in an empty classroom in an empty building. Sometimes I'd look at her and wonder how she did it, said Mrs. Henry. How she went by those mobs and sat there all by herself and yet seemed so relaxed and comfortable. Mrs. Henry would question Ruby in order to find out if the girl was really nervous and afraid, even though she seemed so calm and confident. But Ruby kept saying she was doing fine. The teacher decided to wait and see if Ruby would keep on being so relaxed and hopeful, or if she'd gradually begin to wear down, or even decide that she no longer wanted to go to school. Then, one morning, something unusual happened. Mrs. Henry stood by a window in her classroom as she usually did, watching Ruby walk toward the school. Suddenly, Ruby stopped, right in front of the mob of howling and screaming people. She stood there facing all those men and women. She seemed to be talking to them. Mrs. Henry saw Ruby's lips moving and wondered what Ruby could be saying. The crowd seemed ready to kill her. The marshals were frightened. They tried to persuade Ruby to move along. They tried to hurry her into the school, but Ruby wouldn't budge. Then Ruby stopped talking and walked into the school. When she went into the classroom, Mrs. Henry asked her what happened. Mrs. Henry told Ruby that she'd been watching and that she was surprised when Ruby stopped and talked with the people in the mob. Ruby became irritated. "I didn't stop and talk with them," she said. "Ruby, I saw you talking," Mrs. Henry said. "I saw your lips moving." "I wasn't talking," said Ruby. "I was praying. I was praying for them." Every morning, Ruby had stopped a few blocks away from school to say a prayer for the people who hated her. This morning, she forgot until she was already in the middle of the angry mob. When school was over for the day, Ruby hurried through the mob as usual. After she walked a few blocks and the crowd was behind her, Ruby said the prayer she repeated twice a day, before and after school. "Please, God, try to forgive those people, because even if they say those bad things, they don't know what they're doing. So you could forgive them, just like you did those folks a long time ago when they said terrible things about you." So at the end of my favorite book, they give you some nonfiction information about Ruby Bridges, and I'm just going to read you what's called the afterword. Later that year, 2 white boys joined Ruby at the France Elementary School. Their parents were tired of seeing the boys get into mischief around the house when they could have been in school and learning. The mob became very angry when the first white boys went back to school, but those boys were soon joined by other children. "We've been sitting back and letting our children get cheated out of an education because some people have tried to take the law into their own hands," one parent said. "It's time for us to fight for the side of the law and for our children's rights to go to a school and get their education." They all did get their education, Ruby and a growing number of boys and girls who went to school with her. By the time Ruby was in 2nd grade, the mobs had given up their struggle to scare Ruby and defeat the federal judge's order that the New Orleans schools be desegregated so that children of all races might be in the same classroom. Year after year, Ruby went to the France school. She graduated from it and then went on to graduate from high school. Ruby Bridges is married to a building contractor and has 4 sons who attend school within the New Orleans public school system. Now a successful businesswoman, she has created the Ruby Bridges Educational Foundation for the purpose of increasing parental involvement in schools. So I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about Ruby Bridges, and I hope you'll do some more research and learn even more about her.
I Am Enough by Grace Byers. Like the sun, I'm here to shine. Like the voice, I'm here to sing. Like the bird, I'm here to fly and soar high over everything. Like the trees, I'm here to grow. Like the mountains, here to stand. Like time, I'm here to be and be everything I can. Like the champ, I'm here to fight. Like the heart, I'm here to love. Like a ladder, here to climb, and like the air, to rise above. Like the wind, I'm here to push. Like a rope, I'm here to pull. Like the rain, I'm here to pour and drip and fall until I'm full. Like the moon, I'm here to dream. Like the student, here to learn. Like the water, here to swell. Like the fire, here to burn. Like the winner, I'm here to win. And if I don't, get up again. I know I may sometimes cry, but even then, I'm here to try. I'm not meant to be like you. You're not meant to be like me. Sometimes we will get along, and sometimes we will disagree. I know we don't look the same, our skin, our eyes, our hair, our frame, but that does not dictate our worth. We both have places here on earth. And in the end, we are right here to live a life of love, not fear. I am enough.
Hey Intervale, this is Mr. Velou, and I'm going to be sharing the story I Need My Monster with you. This was written by Amanda Knoll and illustrated by Howard McWilliam. Tonight, when I looked under the bed for my monster, I found this note instead. Gone fishing, back in a week. Gabe. What was I going to do? I needed a monster under my bed. How was I supposed to sleep if my monster was gone? I tried to sleep, but it wasn't the same without Gabe. I missed his ragged breathing, his nose whistling, the scrabbling of his uncut claws. How would I ever get to sleep without Gabe's familiar scary noises and his spooky green ooze? It was no use. Gabe would be gone for a week, and I just had to have a monster. I climbed quietly out of bed so my parents wouldn't hear me. Grown-ups have some strange ideas about monsters under beds. I knocked on the floorboards, then scrambled back under my covers. I waited nervously. Would a new monster appear? What would he be like? Would his snorting be as cheerful as Gabe's? When I heard some creaking under my bed, I knew that the substitute monster had arrived. "Good evening," said a low, breathy voice. "My name is Herbert, and I will be your monster for the evening." Herbert? What kind of name is that for a monster? You don't sound scary at all. Have you ever scared a kid before? Well, no, but I have read all the best books on the topic. Do you have long teeth and scratchy claws? I asked. No, but I have an overbite, and I'm a mouth breather. Listen. Herbert's panting was kind of scary, but it wasn't enough for me. Listen, Herbert, I'm sorry. I just don't think this is going to work. It's nothing personal, but I really need a monster with claws. Picky, picky, Herbert complained. As you wish. I'll go. Then there was some more creaking. Then Herbert was gone. Some scratching warned me that a second monster had appeared. "Good evening," he said in a high, silky voice. "My name is Ralph. I understand you need a monster with claws. If you would please lean over, I will hold out an arm for inspection." I crouched on the edge of the bed, hoping to see a horrible, shaggy arm with sharp, ragged nails. Instead, I was surprised to see sleekly brushed fur with smooth, shiny claws. "Excuse me, I don't mean to be rude," I asked, "but is that nail polish on your claws?" "Yes, it is," Ralph replied. "I believe professional monsters should always be well groomed." I could tell that this was not going to work either. Sorry to disappoint you, Ralph, but I need a monster with scary claws. Like Gabe's, I thought. I heard some more scratching, and I knew Ralph was gone. A minute later, a third voice from under the bed rasped, "Check out these claws, kid." I gathered my courage, and I peered over the edge. The claws were impressive, jaggy, and dark, and razor sharp. So far, so good. I was a little nervous. "Could you stick out your tail?" I whispered. "Sure, but don't get scared." I peeked through my fingers at the slimy tail slithering over the foot of my bed. That's when I noticed the bow. "Are you a girl monster?" "Of course I am," she snapped. Cynthia, do you have a problem with that? Um, yeah, I do, I admitted. I definitely need a boy monster. Boy monsters are for boys, and girl monsters are for girls. Everybody knows that. Well, aren't you a picky one? She sniffed. And then she was gone. Was I being too picky? No. I knew that my monster needed to be well clawed and menacing. The whole point of having a monster, after all, was to keep me in bed, imagining all the scary stuff that could happen if I got out. Then I heard a shuffling noise and some slobbering. A fourth monster was under my bed. Hey, the name's Mac. One look at his claws proved that Mac was a big, scruffy boy monster. I shivered. Maybe this one would work out. Those are excellent claws, but do you have a long tail? I leaned over to see. No, my tail is stumpy, Max slurped. But I do have an unusually long tongue. Why would I be afraid of a long tongue? I asked. Oh, I don't know, he said, trying to sound terrifying. You never know when I might lick you. I fell back on the bed, laughing. Well, if you're not even going to try to work with me, Mac whined. I held in my giggles. I really don't think you should send me away, he warned. Kids who reject 5 monsters in one night. I did not reject 5 monsters tonight, I interrupted. My regular monster went fishing. Fishing, eh? Maybe he just left because you're so picky. Fine, I'm out of here. But I wouldn't expect another monster tonight if I were you. How was I ever going to get to sleep without my monster? I was surprised to hear more creaking under the bed, loud creaking, with scratching. I I thought no more monsters were going to appear tonight, I said. Sorry I'm late, kid. Oof, it was Gabe. I thought I would enjoy fishing, but I didn't, he explained. Those fish scare too easily. No challenge at all. You, however, are challenging, my friend. You're almost too old to be afraid of monsters. You keep me on my toes. Ah, toes, a delicious snack. The bed quivered as Gabe's stomach rumbled with hunger. Now, if you don't mind, I'd like to start the evening with an ominous puddle of drool. I peeked over the edge of the bed. Green ooze spread soundlessly from underneath. Then the bed trembled as Gabe unfurled his spiked tail. He was daring me to guess where he might pop up. I shivered. So, you had some substitute monsters tonight, Gabe said, sharpening his claws on my bedpost. Were you scared? Then Gabe started tapping. I could tell he wanted to know if I still needed him. No other monster can scare me like you, I giggled, and diving under my covers and pulling them up tight. Through the blanket, I heard Gabe's soft, comforting snorts. Ha! I knew it! We're made for each other, he growled. When my blanket started to slip off the bed, I knew Gabe was ready to eat. Now, if you could please stick out your foot, he said. I'd like to nibble your pinky. I yanked my blanket back up and scrunched my feet in so Gabe couldn't get them. No toes tonight, but you can have this, I offered, pushing a pillow off the bed. I didn't even hear it hit the floor. Gabe was back. The ooze was perfect. Everything was back to normal. I shivered again. I'd be asleep in no time. The end. I hope you enjoyed this monster story. Have a good night.
Hi, I'm Mrs. Najar Keith, and I'll be reading Heather Has Two Mommies by Leslie Newman, illustrated by Laura Cornell. Heather lives in a little house with a big apple tree in the front yard and lots of tall grass in the backyard. Heather's favorite number is 2. She has 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 hands, and 2 feet. Heather has 2 pets, a ginger-colored cat named Gingersnap and a black dog named Midnight. Heather also has 2 mommies, Mama Jane and Mama Kate. Mama Kate is a doctor. She has 2 stethoscopes so she and Heather can listen to each other's heartbeats. Mama Jane is a carpenter. She has 2 hammers so she and Heather can build things together. Heather and her mommies have lots of fun together. On sunny days, they go to the park. On rainy days, they stay inside and bake cookies. Heather likes to eat 2 ginger snaps and drink a big glass of milk. One day, Mama Kate and Mama Jane tell Heather that they have a surprise for her. "You're going to start school next week," Mama Kate says. "There'll be lots of other kids to play with, and a teacher named Miss Molly," adds Mama Jane. "Can Midnight and Gingersnap come too?" asks Heather. "No, they have to stay home," Mama Jane says. "But you can bring 2 special things with you," says Mama Kate. Heather chooses her favorite blue blanket to rest with at nap time and her favorite red cup to drink out of at snack time. Soon the big day arrives, and Mama Kate and Mama Jane take Heather to her new school. There are so many things to play with. Heather sees building blocks, dress-up clothes, crayons, and paint. Heather also sees a big round table for snack time and a quiet, cozy corner for nap time. While Mama Jane and Mama Kate talk to Miss Molly, Heather puts 2 puzzles together all by herself. Soon it's time for Mama Jane and Mama Kate to leave. They kiss Heather goodbye, and Heather cries, but only a little. Heather has lots of fun at her new school. She builds a tower out of building blocks and dresses up like a firefighter. She drinks apple juice out of her favorite red cup at snack time and rests in the quiet corner with her favorite blue blanket at nap time. After nap time, all the children sit in a circle while Miss Molly reads them a story about a boy whose father is a veterinarian. "Who knows what a veterinarian is?" asks Miss Molly. "I do. My mommy is a veterinarian," Juan says. "A veterinarian is an animal doctor." "My daddy is a people doctor," shouts David. "My mommy is a people doctor too," Heather shouts even louder. "What does your daddy do?" David asks Heather. "I don't have a daddy," Heather says. She looks around the circle and wonders, "Am I the only one here who doesn't have a daddy?" "I have an idea," Miss Molly says. "Let's all draw pictures of our families." Juan draws his mommy, daddy, and big brother Carlos. Miriam draws her mommy and her sister Rachel playing in the park. Stacy draws her daddy and her papa reading her stories. Joshua hangs up the picture he drew of his mommy and stepfather dropping him off at his daddy's house. Emily tapes up the picture she drew of her grandma and their 2 puppies, Emmett and Charlie. David straightens out the picture he drew of the day his mommy and daddy brought his new sister Veronica home. Miss Molly looks at all the pictures. "Doesn't matter how many mommies or how many daddies your family has," Miss Molly says. "Doesn't matter if your family has sisters or brothers or cousins or grandmas or grandpas or aunts or uncles. Each family is special. The most important thing about a family is that all the people in it love each other." Soon, Heather's first day of school is over. When Mama Kate and Mama Jane arrive to pick her up, Heather shows them all the pictures. Is that me? Mama Kate asks, pointing to Heather's picture. And is that me? Mama Jane asks, pointing to. This is the mommy I love the best, Heather says, pointing to her picture. And this is the mommy I love the best, Heather says, pointing again. Mama Kate and Mama Jane both laugh as Heather gives each of them 2 kisses. Then she takes their hands and they all head home. I hope you enjoyed the story.
Broadway Barks, written by Bernadette Peters, pictures by Liz Murphy. I used to be called Douglas. I used to live in a tall apartment building, but now I live in the park. No one here knows my name. I am waiting to be found. No one takes me for a walk. No one gives me dinner. And no one says, "Good dog, Douglas." I watch a lady who is reading. I hide. She is pretty. I like to sniff her hair. Sometimes she hums. I listen quietly. I decide to follow the lady home, but the streets are busy and I lose sight of her, and I have to go back to the park. The next day, I see the lady again. She is wearing party shoes. I sit down next to her shoes. She gives me a biscuit. She gives me another. Delicious. When the pretty lady gets up and walks down the path, I follow the sweet smell of biscuits. The lady hails a taxi. She turns and smiles at me, and I jump in. To the taxi driver, she says, "Schubert Alley, please." The cab ride is short. When we get out of the taxi, the lady tells me to sit. I listen quietly while she talks. Here we are at Broadway Barks. There will be a show. Hopefully, someone from the audience will adopt you and give you a good home. We go backstage. Someone ties a scarf around my neck. There are many other dogs and cats too. I am very nervous. I am going to be on the stage. I watch from the side. The show begins. A lady with a pretty smile starts the show. Welcome to Broadway Barks. We have wonderful dogs and cats waiting for you to give them good homes. Everyone claps and cheers. I hear singing. Then it's my turn. I sing. Everyone laughs. They just hear barking. Then I dance. Everyone laughs harder. They just see jumping. Someone grabs my leash and pulls me off stage. I'm alone. No one loves me. Nobody wants me. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a small girl appears. She says, "I love your singing. I love your dancing. Would you like to go home with me?" I smile. Yes. The girl hugs me. She smells good. Then she says, "My name is Isabelle. You look like a Kramer to me. From now on, I'm going to call you Kramer." At my new house, I am given dinner, a bath, and a belly rub. When I do a little dance after dinner, I hear, "Good dog, Kramer." In Isabelle's room, there's a nice cozy bed for me to sleep in. Isabelle sings me to sleep. Good night, my pal. Good night, my friend. Tomorrow I'll see you again. Good night, Kramer. Good night, Isabelle. The end.
Hi, boys and girls. I'm going to read you a silly story, but it has a very important message. Bullying doesn't pay. The name of the book is called War at the Ice Cream Store. Mustachio Pistachio versus Bully Vanilli. Written by Dave Gibson and Cheryl DeVega. Illustrated by Sarah Frogman, Dave Gibson, and Jay Petsko. In an ice cream store called the Frozen Frog, not so far away, in fact, right down on Main Street, King Bully Vanilli ruled the frozen flavors. I'm the most popular ice cream. No one is tastier than I. All the children love me, he boasted. Now, Mustachio Pistachio was the loneliest flavor of all because he was the least popular. He'd been around for so long, he had a freezer burn mustache. Every night after the doors were locked and the lights were out, Bully would begin his bullying, and poor Mustachio was his favorite target. You're green and nutty. Who would want to order you anyway? Bully bellowed. That really hurts my feelings, man, said Mustachio. Bully Vanilli kicked Mustachio's bucket out of the freezer. He landed splat on the warm floor and started to melt. Mustachio screamed out to his friends, "Hey guys, can I get a little help here?" But the flavors thought they were no match for King Bully and were frozen in their moose tracks. Mustachio felt deserted. Pun intended. The milkshake declared, "This is the last straw. Come on, guys. We don't have to take this anymore. Can't you see that all our flavors together are stronger than that one boring vanilla? He's nothing without us." And the war was on. The toppings revolted and refused to top Bully Vanilli. The Reese's loaded their pieces. The gummies stopped being chummy. The M&Ms started wrapping. The bananas turned yellow and split in a boat, but came back with a root beer flotilla. General Custard rolled the sugar clones. Storm scoopers parachuted in from the north early on that chocolate Sunday morning. It was almost a meltdown when the alarm went off. The ice cream police ordered everyone to freeze. But there was no stopping the toppings. The hot fudge dipped King Bully and covered his eyes, and suddenly, out of the blue, or green, Mustachio seized the moment and splashed himself in Bully's path. Bully slipped on the melted pistachio and fell to the ground, losing his crown and breaking his cone. Bully sat up dazed and realized that without the tasty toppings and the rainbow of flavors to surround him, he was just plain vanilla. He learned what it felt like to be lonely like Mustachio and said, "I'm sorry, guys, for being such a bully." General Custard declared victory and gave Mustachio the Confectionery Medal of Honor for bravery. The ice cream store will not stand for intolerance. Unless it's lactose, of course, said non-dairy Strawberry. The Rainbow Sprinkles agreed. Never judge, said the Chocolate Fudge. And then, to top it off, General Custard awarded the flavors and toppings a tasty paste-on pistachio mustache for their courage in standing up to bullies. He declared Lucky Fork a bully-free zone. The end.
So I'm going to read a chapter from a book I love called The Magician's Elephant by an author I'm obsessed with, Kate D. Camillo. Chapter 1. At the end of the century before last, in the market square of the city of Baltise, there stood a boy with a hat on his head and a coin in his hand. The boy's name was Peter Augustus Duquesne. And the coin that he held did not belong to him, but was instead the property of his guardian, an old soldier named Vilna Lutz, who had sent the boy to the market for fish and bread. That day in the market square, in the midst of the entirely unremarkable and absolutely ordinary stalls of the fishmongers and cloth merchants and bakers and silversmiths, there had appeared, without warning or fanfare, the red tent of a fortune teller. Attached to the fortune teller's tent was a piece of paper, and penned upon the paper in a cramped but unapologetic hand were these words: "The most profound and difficult questions that could possibly be posed by the human mind or heart will be answered within for the price of 1 floret." Peter read the small sign once, and then again. The audacity of the words! Their dizzying promise made it difficult suddenly for him to breathe. He looked down at the coin, the single floret in his hand. "But I cannot do it," he said to himself. "Truly, I cannot. For if I do, Vilna Lutz will ask where the money has gone, and I will have to lie, and it is a very dishonorable thing to lie." He put the coin in his pocket. He took the soldier's hat off his head and then put it back on. He stepped away from the sign and came back to it and stood considering again the outrageous and wonderful words. "But I must know," he said. He took the floret from his pocket. "I want to know the truth, and so I will do it. But I will not lie about it. And in that way, I will remain at least partly honorable." With these words, Peter stepped into the tent and handed the fortune teller the coin. And she, without even looking at him, said, "1 floret will buy you 1 answer, and only 1. Do you understand?" "Yes," said Peter. He stood in the small patch of light making its sullen way through the open flap of the tent. He let the fortune teller take his hand. She examined it closely, moving her eyes back and forth, as if there was a whole host of very small words inscribed there, an entire book about Peter Augustus Duquesne, composed atop his palm. "Huh," she said at last. She dropped his hand and squinted up at his face. "But of course, you are just a boy." "I am 10 years old," said Peter. He took the hat from his head and stood as straight and tall as he was able. "And I am training to become a soldier, brave and true. But it does not matter how old I am. You took the floret, so now you must give me my answer." "A soldier, brave and true," said the fortune teller. She laughed and spat on the ground. "Very well, soldier, brave and true. If you say it is so, then it is so. Ask me your question." Peter felt a small stab of fear. What if, after all this time, he could not bear the truth? What if he did not really want to know? "Speak," said the fortune teller. "Ask." "My parents," said Peter. "That is your question," said the fortune teller. "They are dead." Peter's hands trembled. "That is not my question," he said. "I know that already. You must tell me something that I do not know. You must tell me of another. You must tell me—" The fortune teller narrowed her eyes. "Ah," she said. "Her? Your sister? That is the question. Very well. She lives." Peter's heart seized upon the words. "She lives. She lives." "No, please," said Peter. He closed his eyes. He concentrated. "If she lives, then I must find her. So my question is, how do I make my way there, to where she is?" He kept his eyes closed. He waited. "The elephant," said the fortune teller. "What?" Peter said. He opened his eyes, certain that he had misunderstood. "You must follow the elephant," said the fortune teller. "She will lead you there." Peter's heart, which had risen up high inside of him, now sank slowly back to its normal resting place. He put his hat on his head. "You are having fun with me," he said. "There are no elephants here." "Just as you say," said the fortune teller. "That is surely the truth, at least for now. But perhaps you have not noticed. The truth is forever changing." She winked at him. "Wait a while," she said. "You will see." Peter stepped out of the tent. The sky was gray and heavy with clouds, but everywhere people talked and laughed, vendors shouted and children cried, and a beggar with a black dog at his side stood in the center of it all and sang a song about the darkness. There was not a single elephant in sight. Still, Peter's stubborn heart would not be silenced. It beat out the two simple, impossible words over and over again. She lives, she lives, she lives. Could it be? No, it could not be, for that would mean that Vilna Lutz had lied to him, and it was not at all honorable thing for a soldier, a superior officer, to lie. Surely Vilna Lutz would not lie. Surely he would not. Would he? It is winter, sang the beggar. It is dark and cold, and things are not what they seem, and the truth is forever changing. I do not know what the truth is, said Peter, but I do know that I must confess. I must tell Vilna Lutz what I've done. He squared his shoulders, adjusted his hat, and began the long walk back to the apartment's polonaise. As he walked, the winter afternoon turned to dusk, and the gray light gave way to gloom, and Peter thought, the fortune teller is lying. No, Vilna Lutz is lying. No, it is the fortune teller who lies. No, no, it is Vilna Lutz. On and on like that, the whole way back. And when he came to the apartment's polonaise, he climbed the stairs to the attic apartment very slowly, putting one foot carefully in front of the other, thinking with each step, he lies, she lies, he lies, she lies. The old soldier was waiting for him, sitting in a chair at the window, a single candle lit, the papers of a battle plan in his lap. His shadow cast large on the wall behind him. You are late, Private Duquesne, said Vilna Lutz, and you are empty-handed? Sir, said Peter. He took off his hat. I have no fish and no bread. I gave the money to a fortune teller. A fortune teller? Said Vilna Lutz. A fortune teller? He tapped his left foot and one made of wood against the floorboard. A fortune teller? You must explain yourself. Peter said nothing. Tap, tap, tap went Vilna Lutz's wooden foot. Tap, tap, tap. I am waiting, he said. Private Duquesne, I am waiting for you to explain. It is only that I have doubts, sir, said Peter, and I know that I should not have doubts. Doubts? Doubts? Explain yourself. Sir, I cannot explain myself. I have been trying the whole way here. There is no explanation that will suffice. Very well, then, said Vilna Lutz. You will allow me to explain for you. You have spent the money that did not belong to you. You have spent it in a foolish way. You have acted dishonorably. You will be punished. You will retire without your evening rations. Sir, yes, sir, said Peter, but he continued to stand, his hat in his hands, in front of Vilna Lutz. Is there something else you wish to say? No. Yes. Which is it, please? No or yes? Sir, have you yourself ever told a lie? Said Peter. I? Yes, said Peter. You, sir. Vilna Lutz sat up straighter in his chair. He raised a hand and stroked his beard, tracing the line of it, making certain that the hairs were arranged just so that they came together in a fine military point. At last he said, You, who spend money that is not yours, you, who spends the money of others like a fool, you will speak to me of who lies? I am so sorry, sir, said Peter. I am quite certain that you are, said Vilna Lutz. You are also dismissed. He picked up his battle plans. He held them up to the light of the candle and muttered to himself, So, and it must be so, and then, so. Later that night, when the candle was quenched and the room was in darkness, and the old soldier was snoring in his bed, Peter Augustus Duquesne lay on his pallet on the floor and looked up at the ceiling and thought, He lies, she lies, he lies, she lies. Someone lies, but I do not know who. If she lies with her ridiculous talk of elephants, then I am, as Vilna Lutz said, a fool who believes that an elephant will appear and lead me to my sister who is dead. But if he lies, then my sister is alive. His heart thumped. If he lies, then Adele lives. I hope that he lies, said Peter aloud in the darkness, and his heart startled at such treachery, astonished at the voicing aloud of such an unsoldierly sentiment, thumped again, much harder this time. Not far from the apartment's polonaise, across the rooftops and through the darkness of the winter night, stood the Bliffendorf Opera House, and that evening upon its stage, a magician of advanced years and failing reputation performed the most astonishing magic of his career. He intended to conjure a bouquet of lilies, but instead the magician brought forth an elephant. The elephant came crashing through the ceiling of the opera house amid a shower of plaster dust and roofing tiles and landed in the lap of a noblewoman, a certain Madame Bettine Lavon, whom the magician had intended to present the bouquet. Madame Lavon's legs were crushed. She was thereafter confined to a wheelchair and given to exclaiming often and in a voice of wonder, in the midst of some conversations that had nothing at all to do with elephants or roofs, "But perhaps you do not understand. I was crippled by an elephant that came through the roof." As for the magician, he was immediately, at the behest of Madame Lavon, imprisoned. The elephant was imprisoned too. She was locked in a horse stable. A chain was wrapped around her left ankle. The chain was attached to an iron rod planted firmly in the earth. At first, the elephant felt one thing and one thing only: dizzy. If she had turned her head too quickly to the right or left, she was aware of the world spinning in a truly alarming manner. So she did not turn her head. She closed her eyes and kept them closed. There was all about her a great hubbub and roar. The elephant ignored it. She wanted nothing more than for the world to hold itself still. After a few hours, the dizziness passed. The elephant opened her eyes and looked around her and realized that she did not know where she was. She knew only one thing to be true. Where she was not where she should be. Where she was not where she belonged. And that's the end of chapter 1.
Today I'm going to read 1 Inch Tall by Shel Silverstein from the book Where the Sidewalk Ends. 1 inch tall. If you were only 1 inch tall, you'd ride a worm to school. The teardrop of a crying ant would be your swimming pool. A crumb of cake would be a feast and last you 7 days at least. A flea would be a frightening beast if you were 1 inch tall. If you were only 1 inch tall, you'd walk beneath the door, and it would take about a month to get down to the store. A bit of fluff would be your bed, and you'd swing upon a spider's thread and wear a thimble on your head if you were 1 inch tall. You'd surf across the kitchen sink upon a stick of gum. You couldn't hug your mama, you'd have to hug her thumb. You'd run from people's feet in fright. To move a pen would take all night. This poem took 14 years to write, 'cause I'm just 1 inch tall. And here's the picture that accompanies the story. I hope you enjoyed.
Stand Tall, a book about integrity by Sherry J. Miners, illustrated by Elizabeth Allen and read to you by Mrs. Timmons. I have a place where I belong. I'm learning who I am, and it makes me want to stand tall. Many people care about me and want to help. I can listen to someone's ideas and then make my own choice. When I have many choices, I want to think about each one. Then I can decide what to do. Sometimes I can tell by how I feel. I can think about what's important to me and then plan what I need to do to make it happen. I feel peaceful and strong when I make good choices and I don't give up. I show courage when I make up my own mind and do what I think is right. When someone asks me to help, I like to say yes. When I do what I say I will, my words come true. People can trust me and depend on me. I can make good choices even when I'm the only one who knows. I stand tall when I notice a problem, and I try to make it right. When I stand up for something important, I can make the world a little better. I stand tall when I encourage someone to let that person shine. I show respect when I let people know that they are important. What I do matters. I feel needed when I'm part of things that are bigger than I am. Being kind is always the right thing to do. I try to act the way I want people to act with me. I am the only one like me. I plan to stand tall and be my very best.